Hey guys, welcome to the Wedding Vendors Happy Hour with your hosts, Derek and Jade.
What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in and welcome to episode 25 of the Wedding Vendors Happy Hour. Again, my name is Derek with DP Films Productions.
My name is Jade with Just As Promised Events. Today we chat with Reina Smith from Fête Quill, an incredibly talented calligrapher. She's been featured in Martha Stewart Weddings, The Knot magazine, the front cover of California Wedding Day, and has won Best Invitation Designer 3 years in a row from California Wedding Day.
That's right. This is going to be an awesome episode as we jump into the mind of Reina's creative designs. So grab a drink, take a seat, and let's get to it. Hey, what's up, Reina? Derek and Jade here. Thanks for being a part of our show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So to kick off this interview, we always like the guest to just introduce themselves by, letting the listeners know who they are, what they do, and how long they've been doing it. Take it away.
Okay. Yeah. Well, my name is Reina. So I am the owner and creative of Fête Quill. So Fête rhymes with bet. Most people always call it like feet. Mm-hmm. But in the very beginning of my business, I love anything like French, and so chose that as my name. So Fête Quill means Fête translates to like events basically, and then Quill being the basis of calligraphy. So the basis of my business is design. So I do anything calligraphy related, stationery, printed paper goods, and also day of items, so wedding signage and paper goods. And I've been in business for over 6 years now. Kind of crazy. It's gone by really fast. So I kind of base it off of when my husband and I got married. So we're going into our 6th year of marriage on January 1st. Nice. And so I started my business like 6 to 7 months before we got married. So that's how I can keep track of it all.
There you go. That's awesome. So when did you first get into calligraphy? Like, were you always super artsy growing up?
Yes. Very, very artsy craft. One of my first businesses in my 20s was actually a gift wrapping business. I love anything paper. I'm very tactile. So I'm the type of person, I go to the fabric store and I just like walk up and down all the aisles and just feel everything. I just love all the different patterns and stuff. So, and I've always had really good handwriting. When I have to do it on like a school level, back when teaching cursive and everything. And one of my teachers, I think it was in high school, my parents still hadn't bought a computer yet. So every paper that I was turning in was handwritten. That was kind of during the transition where they were starting to require and want the students to send in their stuff computer. But it was my English teacher, and I remember it's always stuck in the back of my head. He held up my paper, which was all done by hand. He's like, I would rather have this done in Reina's handwriting than any computer any day. So I've always loved it. I would do just pen and tattoos on my friends and scripts and stuff. And it wasn't until probably about 7.5 years ago, I took a professional calligraphy class down in Santa Barbara. And that's when I really fell in love with it. It was just, the actual, what I was doing before wasn't real true calligraphy, but it was when I finally took that class, it was my eyes opened and I was just oh my gosh, there's all this fun stuff. I bought way too much ink, all different types of papers, and just went crazy and just immersed myself into it, signed up for more so online. There was a lot more options online, but I did go to a class down in Los Angeles and just threw myself into it and fell in love and found my niche basically.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So going through all of those classes too, were they all different styles, and did you create your own calligraphy
There
style?
were. Yeah, the first class was actually broad tip calligraphy. So when you look at like that really old school Roman style. It's very blocky, kind of like when you're driving around San Luis and the names of the streets, like that very like broad tip, you know, it's very flat and broad. So there's not much range that you can do for it. The class that I took down in Los Angeles was modern calligraphy, and that's with just a regular nib. So that's when you can get those thin lines, and then you can control how deep you want to go. So there's a lot more freedom to that. So, but the general calligraphy that I do is considered modern calligraphy. I have studied Spencerian and also copper plates, but those are more of a strict form. I prefer a more loose and modern type form.
Mm-hmm.
Super cool. So from the sounds of it, what got you in the calligraphy? Was it your teacher who was always saying like, hey, I want everything handwritten by Reina here? And you're like, whoa, I got a good, you know, I think I got something going on here. Or like, what was it that got you right into calligraphy?
As a business?
As just like something you knew you wanted to pursue.
It was falling in love with the art form, and also I went to school for business management, so I always knew I wanted to own and operate my own business. Originally, it was going to be coordination for weddings, and I've always wanted to be in the wedding industry. Mm-hmm. So kind of a culmination of everything, just realizing I love this. I'm good at it. I'll get better with practice, you know, because some of my earlier stuff was not that great. But, you know, and then it was just kind of like that spark, like, you know, I could really do this and have it as a business that I love. So, you know, I don't think I ever really went into calligraphy as a hobby. You know, it was more of like the businesswoman in me felt like this is something that I could make, you know, into an actual business.
How cool. And it's something that you love and you're like really, really good at, and you just get to do that for a living. I like
how you're just like, I could do this. I'm jumping straight into business. Just right.
Pretty much. Yeah. That's pretty, you can ask my husband too. That's pretty much how it happened. It was very much like overnight, where it's just like I said, that spark. It was just like, okay, you know, it's like I went out, got my business license, started researching the area, you know, like seeing what was out there, like threw myself out there and just be like, okay, let's make this happen. And, you know, and it's all just, you know, spiraled because of that. So.
Yeah, that's super cool. So you were self-taught, and then you took classes to just really enhance and tighten up the calligraphy experience. That's cool.
Yeah. Continued practice. You know, classes, I'm definitely a big fan of perpetual students. I'm not on like the college level, you know, there's no way I'm going to go back to that, you know, just like, but continuing learning for like what you do, you know, honing in on your craft. And, you know, I'm continually signing up for other classes, whether it's paid or it's free or going onto YouTube and stuff, just, you know, cause there's so much information out there, not just for calligraphy, but just, you know, like I self-taught myself graphic design too, because I knew I wanted to get into stationery and make invitations and menus, but I had never touched any Adobe products like Illustrator or Photoshop or anything. And I signed up for a class and learning how to digitize calligraphy and then bring it into computer. And then years later, I'm just like before you called, I was working in Adobe Illustrator and, you know, just moving stuff around and doing this and doing that and manipulating font. And so it's just, so it's just been like, you know, beyond calligraphy. I mean, it was just continued use, you know, use of it, but also then learning how to also use it in different applications.
Yeah, that's perfect. I like, cause your stuff is, you know, amazing and looks like perfection. And like you're saying, you just always, you like to just keep on learning and, you know, making yourself better, which is good.
Pays off,
yeah. And there's great teachers, great people to learn from out there too. So it's, you know, I don't take as much as I used to in the beginning years, but like still every year, you know, there's classes that are popping out, which like, you know what, that'd be really nice to to learn, even if I don't apply it to my business, like it's like, how to marble paper. It's like, okay, I may not marble paper all the time, but it looks interesting. And also it's good to know like methods too. Like there's like letterpress or foil or like all the different print types. Mm-hmm. Even though I don't do it in house and I don't plan to, like I'm not going to go buy a letterpress machine. Yeah. It's good to know how it's made because then you can better serve your customer.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, I hear your little lingo. Marble, or what was that you said? Marble paper?
There's so many different terms. It's weekly where I like learn something new and it's just like, oh, okay.
That's so cool. Mm-hmm. So when you started your business, when did you know that you wanted to get into the wedding industry as a calligrapher? Was that something you knew right away or was it something you transitioned into?
Oh yeah, I knew I wanted to go into it right away. But I've always loved weddings. I'm a bachelorette fan for going on way too many years than I want to admit. So I've always been like, I love vows, and I'm the person that cries at vows. So I always knew I wanted to get into the wedding industry because it's where my heart felt, that it belonged. And I also did a lot of research for this area and realized that there was a gap of professional wedding calligraphers and stationers and signage. And, I was like, okay, well, I have the skill set. I may still be working, and learning a lot. And I have, especially from the first year of business, but, I knew from the get-go that I wanted to do weddings and very grateful for the community here. And, because they embraced me from the very beginning. They're so super helpful. And it's also a great area to be in because of the amount of weddings that come to this area as well. So it's a good market for weddings.
So I was curious, since you started your business like 6 months before your wedding, did you do all of the stationery for your own wedding?
No, actually I didn't. My husband and I, we went to Las Vegas and we only had, I think including us, there was only 10 people there. My mom and her husband, my best friends. We got married actually on New Year's Day, which that year was like a Thursday. And a lot of my really close friends are in the hospitality industry. So it's like one of the busiest weeks, of the year. So they weren't able to go. They were invited, but they couldn't make it. Oh. And I totally understood that. My husband's close family, his brother, sisters, and his parents, they were there too. So super small, which is how we wanted it. I never wanted a big wedding. I like to be in the background. I like to do the background type of stuff. The idea of standing in front of like hundreds of people just intimidated me so much. But the number one reason is my father. He passed away in 2010. And he had always told me, he was like, I'm going to walk you down the aisle. And he wasn't there for that. And I don't think I could have done a big wedding with that weighing on my heart. So we figured Vegas was easy. It worked out perfectly for us, for both of us. And it was just, so I didn't do anything. I just basically called people and be like, hey, you're invited and this is when it's happening. And, and that's how it worked out. So, I mean, at some point we want to do like a big reception or something, maybe for like a vow renewal, like 10, 15 years down the road or something. But, we're happy with, how we went around it. So nope, didn't do my own stuff. And also I have always known too, just because I was in coordination and design before I went into stationery, I would probably be one of those bridezillas that would just micromanage everyone. And I didn't want to do that to any of my vendor friends. So I'd probably I'd be like, okay, we're going with this design. And then like 2 minutes later, I'm like, no, let's go with this design. And I drive myself crazy. So I know that in me, it's just like, let's just go to Vegas, keep it simple, easy, go to the chapel and be done.
Yeah. And then just party right after.
Yeah. Maybe start planning now for that 10-year anniversary party.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've actually in my mind, I've like narrowed it down. I'm like, ooh, this is like kind of like where I want it to be. This is who's going to design it. And I'm just going to tell them, just do this. Yep. And don't tell me.
Yeah.
I'm just going to show up.
So cool. So, well, first, our condolences. That's really sad about the father. And then second, that's super cool that you got married in Vegas. Awesome.
On New Year's.
On New Year's.
Yeah, it was, I mean, it's a crazy place to be during that holiday. We didn't go out New Year's Eve because we just knew, I mean, like they board up the whole entire strip. You know, casinos just don't let you in as well. So like the streets are just super crowded, but our hotel had like, they put fireworks up like in 3 different spots on the strip. And our hotel had a perfect view of one of the fireworks shows. So we didn't have to like crane our neck or like watch it on TV. We just like watched it, you know, right out of the window. So
cool. It was
fun, but yeah, it's so packed during that time, but it's just, you know, it's the energy of Vegas. You're just like,
yeah, for sure.
What a way to start a marriage.
Yeah, no kidding. So back to the business side of things. As a creative, I just was curious, like what like for vendors, I love hearing what inspires you. Like what inspires you to create and come up with new ideas?
Oh, my main inspiration are the couples that I work with and their stories. Just who they are, what they like, what they don't like, how they met, you know, what they do together. That's one of my biggest inspirations. I don't go on Pinterest that much because I really don't want to kind of draw inspiration from what's already been done. Mm-hmm. And most of, like, especially my stationery, it's all just completely custom to who the couple is and trying to like tell their story with paper goods and embellishments and stamps and artwork and everything. So like, for example, I don't feel like I'm really good at styled shoes. And I've come to the conclusion that the reason that I'm not is because I don't have a couple to feed from. You know, it's like, you know, I get sent images and like, you know, it's like, oh, do what you want. It's like, yeah, well, my inspiration comes from people. Like, I'm really more inspired by like talking to someone and like them telling me their story and getting excited about that. And it's hard for me to like see a mood board and not feel that inspiration because like I'm not talking with a couple who's like over the moon about getting married and like so in love and everything. And it's, you know, I kind of feel like that's a separation for me. So number one, is definitely the couples that work with. I mean, they're the ones that really inspire me the most.
I love that. So you just get to feel like super connected with them and then translate, you know, their story to paper. I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That's the number one thing I try and do is like tell the story through paper. Nice.
So all of your creations are like so pretty and all of them are unique. So that now I understand like where that comes from. So can you go a little bit more into like what the design process looks like leading up to the final product?
Well, I kind of warned my couples in the very beginning for stationery. I'm just like, we're going to get to know each other very well. So be prepared for that. I ask a lot of random questions that they may not think is relevant to stationery. You know, it's kind of like, you know, it's also me like wanting them to like send me pictures of like your car or your house and how it's decorated or send me stuff of like where you like what type of hotel you like if you were to be if you were to go to a hotel in Las Vegas, no holds barred, like no money concern, like which one would you choose? You know, so if like I'm working with someone who's like chose Caesar's Palace, like all right, we're looking at something a little bit more like over the top, or as opposed like if they choose like Aria, it's like okay, you're looking at something a bit more modern, you know, sleek and streamlined. So I mean the process just starts basically, it's like it all starts with an email or a phone call, you know, and then I send out my questionnaire, which gathers like the initial information, you know, just like, do you have what is your inspiration? Do you have a mood board yet? Who are you working with? Date, name, kind of stuff that I need in my back end and able, so when I go to like build all of this, like, okay, here's how you spell your last name, or here's your parents' name, because they're going to be part of the invitation as well. And then it's a conversation after that, before a proposal goes out, because I like to talk with them for usually about an hour, because I need to figure out what's important to them. Is it the paper? Do they want really thick paper? Do they want handmade paper? Do they want colored paper? Is the print important to them? Do they want letterpress or flat print because they want watercolor images? And especially one of the major things that I ask them is like, what do you not want in your invitations or anything? Like, and a lot of times it's like, we don't want any fluorescence or glitter. It's like, not a problem. I don't make anything with glitter. Glitter doesn't come near this place, but it's like, but then there's specific things too. They're just like, we hate ... Can't stand it. It's like, great. And what's interesting too is, more often than not, I get more of what we don't want than what they do want, because we're at the beginning process of everything. They're approaching me because they want something custom and specific, but they're not entirely sure what they want quite yet. So it's me gathering all this information so I can decipher what they want. Basically, it's like, because I deal with this every day, they're dealing with it once, so like all the terminology that I'm like spewing out, it's like, this is stuff that I work with all the time, but you tell people like letterpress, they're like, what is that? We have no idea.
Right.
So, and, from there it's a proposal, and then we move into the design process, and that's where we really get into like the nuts and bolts of everything. So, and just what designs they love, what materials they love, how we're going to incorporate it all. I also like to make things special to, if there's like a special story or significance to their family. Like one suite that I did, like the ladybug was very important, and that was for her grandmother. So we just kind of like put it in like the liner, just kind of like floating around, It wasn't like a big element, but it was still just like hidden in like a little place to where it's like, a little nod to her grandmother, which is what she wanted.
Oh, so. See, that's super cool. That's like really fascinating. I like the way you described by you asking them questions, and they're like the hotel one, especially, where you're just like, oh, what kind of hotel if you were to pick one? And when you mentioned like Caesar Palace or whatever, like I pictured it in the styles of each hotel, and that's really cool how you come up with stuff like that. Yeah,
and like I kind of warned them. I'm like, it's totally random question. You're going to be like, what the heck is she asking? but it's helpful, So it's helpful to me, because there's so much that goes into design that you don't want to put forth something to them that they're not going to like. They're going to be like, whoa, wait, we like Aria, but you're showing me Caesar's Palace.
Yeah, that's really cool. I would have never guessed that so much goes into that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So with when you like handwrite, do you handwrite every single invitation, or is there like a process to where like you do one and then it's just like digital from there, or laser printed, or I'm just naming things here.
It's a longer process. So the majority of work that I start with is in Adobe Illustrator. So it's graphic design is the base of it.
Yeah.
I'm laying it all out, all the type and the font and the grid and everything, and making sure it's, spaced out accordingly and all the information is correct. And then I send to print. So I don't print anything in house. Basically, I send it to a printer. I give them the spec, the paper, the size, what type of print. They take care of it because they're the professionals. So one of the big things with my business is that, I'm not a print shop. I have never wanted to be a print shop, even though I make printed goods. It's like two completely separate businesses. You can be a designer, but not a print shop. And you can be a print shop, but you're not a designer.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some that are both. And I decided at the very beginning of my business, printing just isn't for me. There's so many, there's so much that goes into printing. I mean, tens of thousands of dollars investments because the machines that you need, and I don't have the space and I don't have the patience for that. So, I decided from the get-go that I was going to outsource to a printer. And I basically, like, the printer that I've used them since the get-go, and they print for a lot of other stationers too. And I found them just from following people on Instagram and loving their work, and then realizing, this is the printer that they use. Okay, cool. So, everything I do, for the most part, I do some stuff in-house, like smaller runs, especially this year, like if people need like 10 menus, it's like, okay, I can do that at home.
Yeah.
But I don't do like letterpress or foil or any of the specialty techniques in-house. I send out for that. But yeah, it's great. They take care of it. They cut it down because they have the big stat cutters, or they foil it or letterpress it and then ship it back up to me, and it's all ready to go.
That's cool. Yeah. That's like when I do like photo for a wedding and then they print it through like Miller's or a different company to get their print. Or when I do video, I send their video through like a digital gallery from another company. So everything works. So that's cool how you do your stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all a big network.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's lots of, it's like like a whole bunch of different like veins going out and then all coming back to me for like assembly and everything.
Yeah. Speaking of which, so when someone orders like save the dates or invitations, do you also always like stuff them and do all the stamps and mail them out to the guests too?
I give them the option, so the couples can choose to assemble stuff, seal, assemble, stamp, all that kind of stuff themselves. I have never had a couple that has chosen to do that themselves. they always choose to add on assembly. And I think for one, it's a peace of mind. It takes hours, sometimes days to put together invitations. It depends on how elaborate they are, like wax seals, ribbons, vintage stamps, and then especially on my end too, I have a lot of proof checking. So, it goes through me and it goes through at least one or two other people to ensure that, all the addresses are accounted for, that they're correct in the format the client sent them to me. And then also there's typically like two sets. So there's like one set that is the majority of guests. And then there's another set for those who are invited to like the rehearsal dinner and like the family and friends type thing, like the wedding party. Mm-hmm. So there's usually like a smaller set that the couples need to gather information for that. It's like, are you coming to the rehearsal dinner? What meal choice are you doing? And et cetera. So then we also need to double check that those envelopes have those specific inserts as well. So I think most couples choose not to because they have full-time jobs already. They're working 40 plus hours a week as is. So then coming home and then doing that is not something that they want to do. I think it also makes it easier for them because like, especially if there is wax seals or ribbon or specific type of, process, a lot of my things are very complicated. I already have the tools in-house and I've already worked with these materials for years. So it's quicker and easier for me as opposed to letting them know it's like, okay, you're going to need this. You need to plan for this.
Yeah.
And it's just easier that they don't have to worry about it.
That's crazy. I remember when Jade and I got married and we did our own invitations. Oh man, that was a hassle. My hat tips off to you.
Yeah, it really is. And I typically don't do it just me. I have like help. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because it's very monotonous work too. You know, it's kind of, to a degree, it's kind of mind numbing. And for me, I always like to like move on to the next thing or like, you know, right. So, and I have a couple gals who help me out throughout the year and they love that type of stuff. Yeah. Like they could do it for hours. They absolutely love it. And it's like, perfect. So you guys do this part. I'll do like the specifics. Like usually I'm doing the wax seals and the ribbon because those are a bit more finicky. But they like love applying the stamps and like stuffing everything and sealing it and then fact checking everything. They love it. So, but it really does take a team to do it. And also depending on like if we're on a time crunch, you know, and we need to get it, you know, postmarked before a certain date, it's like, all right, call in the troops, you know, let's get it taken care of.
Let's get in the arm. So I'm just curious, like, with this, you know, handwriting stuff, have you ever had like carpal tunnel? Like your hand just like,
yes. You know, in previous years, I mean, of course, 2020 has just been not as expected, but because I've noticed this year because I'm not writing as much. It takes when I am doing a project where it's either signage or calligraphy and I'm actually doing something by hand. It takes longer because I'm having to take more breaks and my hand does cramp up, not badly, but it's like I need to remind myself to like loosen my hand, you know, because I'll like get intense because like I haven't done this in forever. And you know, it's like, oh, okay, loosen up, light grip, you know, not a death grip. So, but in previous years, not as much. I mean, I think there was a couple times where it's just, I mean, there was a lot, like there was a whole bunch of envelopes that I had to address and then, you know, other stuff on top of that. And I think like at the end of that week, I was just like, basically like a pitcher, you know, baseball pitcher. I'm like just icing my arm, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Dead weight. But in the beginning, like when I first started my business, it was, you know, progressive to where it's like, you know, my hand would get tired, but I want to say like the past 3 or 4 years, I haven't noticed it. This year I have because I'm not doing as much. So it's definitely gotten a little bit rustier.
Interesting. So. It's like a muscle memory kind of a thing. Like,
yeah.
Like kind of going to the gym.
Totally.
Back, like we get super sore. And when we work out all the time, you don't get sore as fast. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
So what's the ideal timeline for couples to book their invitation suites?
For invitation suites, I recommend 6 to 8 weeks out. So I can do stuff in a rush. It just depends on timing and like what they need and how they need and what I have going on. So if my production schedule is jam packed and they need something in 2 weeks, it's usually a hard no because I mean, especially even with when I send stuff out to print, that has a 10 business day turnaround. So I mean, I'm not getting it in hand until 2 weeks. And plus there's the design time on top of it. I really prefer to just get to know my couples. I don't want to rush them through the process because it's already an intense process.
Yeah.
So
what's your ideal time frame? Like in order to like really spend time with the couple and do your best design for them?
I prefer 8 to 10 weeks. I like a lot more time, you know, because designs evolve, you know, like we could come up with like initial thoughts and then throughout the design process, things just change, you know, so it's like having to plan for that change and how everything evolves. So I usually prefer 8 to 10, but I put like 6 to 8 is a reasonable amount.
That's super cool. So so when people do inquire, they're like, oh, we have like our weddings in like a week. You're like, sorry, no, I can't do that. No way.
Not for stationery. Usually, because like the 3 different aspects of my business, there's stationery and then there's like the day of, which is usually like calligraphy and signage. Like signage is very last minute. So, and I'm the type of person, I work really well under pressure. That's actually how I prefer to work. So signage pushes that part of me really well, because it's usually 1 to 2 months out, if not even that. I mean, I've had inquiries before for signage where they're like 2 weeks. They're like, our wedding's in 2 weeks and we need a seating chart, welcome sign, bar menus, place cards. And it's like, okay, you know, and if I can fit it in, you know, again, it depends on the production schedule and what's already currently, you know, in the pipeline. But, you know, that's sometimes how signage works, and kind of like, okay. And that one's really easy. Like signage and day of is basically a lot more easier to create a proposal for, because for the most part, it's not all the same, but for the most part, it's always the same. Like a welcome sign is going to be like 24 by 36. Seating chart is going to be first name, last name, seating assignment, bar menus, beer, wine, signature cocktails. So like not much changes. Like the materials and the design may fluctuate, but for the most part, it's very like gridded, you know, like this is what it's going to be. So, but those I usually work on a very tighter schedule. It helps when the coordinators, and I work with a lot of coordinators, you know, they'll come to me months in advance because they're preparing their couple and they know what the couple wants and needs. And so they're like, all right, well, let's lock down these services so you don't have to worry about it. It's usually the 2 weeks out when it's someone who doesn't have a coordinator and they're just like, oh no, we need this stuff and we didn't realize it, or they had a friend who was going to do it and the friend either like something happened, like they got injured or they flaked, you know, stuff happens unfortunately, but you know, and they're like, oh my gosh, now we need this stuff. So it's usually the difference when it comes to that. But, you know, it's like, okay, well, don't panic. I know how to, you know, work you through this. So let's, you know, we'll get from point A to point B.
Yeah, like I got you covered. I like how you mentioned on there that when people usually make an inquiry, you already have like a mindset of how to do it. By with that in mind, do you ever sometimes get like, not bored, or I guess not bored, but like, you know, you get like in that same rhythm. It's like the same, like when I edit, sometimes it's like, oh, I want to do something different, but you like you said, it's already the same process. Do you ever get stale and want to like switch it up or something?
Definitely. I mean, yeah, I think I'm always looking for like new ways to do stuff or new ways to present stuff. Yeah. And also it's wedding trends too. Like, I mean, it's every year is going to be a little bit different. There's still going to, like when I first started, I mean, chalkboards and mirrors were huge. Like that's all you saw and that's all people wanted for their weddings. Last year, I barely did any mirrors and chalkboards. The design was completely different. You know, so I guess now, like, if people were to come to me and they're like, we want a chalkboard, I'm like, meh.
They're done that.
Yeah. I mean, and it's like, I can do it and I have my process down to where I know how to do it. It's almost just kind of like my mind isn't even there. I'm just going through the movements, like you said, like muscle memory, you know, for it. Like, but yeah, I definitely like to, you know, talk with couples, you know, who are just like, you know, we're thinking of doing something a little bit different. It's like, yes. Like, let's chat, let's talk, you know, something new. But then it also helps to have stuff that isn't, because, and it helps to like offset each other, you know, so I'm not like pushing myself too much on the design aspect, because then it's sometimes nice to just do monotony. It's like place card, you know, and like, then you kind of have like a little bit more zen moments with that. Whereas like design, sometimes you can just like look, sometimes you just see too much, you know, like there's an oversaturation of ideas and it's like honing in on that one that's just going to work perfectly. So sometimes getting to that point is the hard part.
So what's your personal favorite thing to create? Like, you make so much: invitations, place cards, seating charts.
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I mean, I would say that stationery is definitely my favorite because just of the process of it, you know, I mean, excuse me, like, you know, I just sent out one that was handmade paper with a wax seal and like vellum on top. And it's so super like romantic and feminine and, you know, and very tactile with the handmade paper. And then the other suite that I did was so like complete opposite. It was like watercolor, but it was like uber ranch style. You know, it was like a really nice, like leather looking envelope. Like it's this beautiful, like red brown color and lots of fun, like, you know, vintage stamps of like a buffalo and then like a cowboy on a horse and everything. And like, we actually used like we did use a wax seal, but it was just chocolate brown, you know, nothing like feminine, you know, and then we put like a little dried, it's called like a bunny tail, this little, you know, little dried element. So, I mean, two opposite, completely different suites, and both were just perfect for the couple. So I feel like that's what I really love to do. Is just getting to know people, you know, and then just, you know, I mean, everyone that the ranch style, especially, like everyone who got it, they knew exactly who they were getting it from. You know, it's like, oh, yep, we know this. We know before we would open it, you know, look at the names. We know exactly who this is.
So cool.
So cool.
So what are some unconventional things that you've done calligraphy on other than paper?
Oh, gosh.
A lot.
Let's see. Rock, oyster shells. I mean, vases and vessels of, all sorts. Laser cut wood.
Cool.
Oh my. I mean, it's the things that can be written on are pretty much endless.
Yeah.
You know, if it's a surface, you can write on it. I mean, as long as it's not like there's like some surfaces that are like kind of holy, you know, like concrete sometimes has like a lot of holes in it or something. But I mean, agate is another one. I mean, anything. When I teach classes, like my hand lettering classes too, I'm just like, trust me, you can write on anything. Just if you see something, you can write on it more than likely. So
have you ever had someone inquire and just give you an oddball thing and you're just like, what the?
I think that happens about a dozen times throughout the year. Yes.
So
it's a lot of research on my end. So trying to figure out, like, number one, can it be done? Number two, how can it be done? 3, where do I get the stuff to make it happen? So Google is my best friend.
Oh, yeah. So when that happens, is it usually something the couple provides you the materials, or you like order it for them? Or
I typically don't like materials being supplied because I've worked with so many materials throughout the years that there is some stuff. I mean, especially like, for example, like fabric. Fabric is like one of those things that you can't write on everything. It bleeds. It doesn't look good. You know, so there's certain applications that you just can't do. And there's certain things that I will allow. Like one of my couples, they supplied like their own like wine bottles to be written on. It's like, that's perfectly fine because wine bottles don't vary. You know, if you're going to get a wine bottle, it's going to be like the same type of surface, no matter what.
Yeah.
But it's unusual stuff to where I usually is like, you know, I prefer to source it, at least if I can get a sample too, and then make sure it can work before ordering like 200 and then it doesn't work.
right.
So yeah, some stuff is supplied as long as it's like a tried and true type of thing, but the majority of items I'll order on their behalf.
Super cool. Hey, before we continue, we just want to take a quick little break.
Welcome back, guys. We're still here with Reina from Fête Quill. So, Reina, hey. Before we were talking a little bit about like wedding signs and how some of them are, practically almost the same things time after time. So do you have any pre-made signs that can be rented out?
Yes, I do. So I started that almost 3 years ago. I was just seeing that there was a lot of repetitiveness in the industry. So, I mean, table numbers, especially, it's like for each wedding, I was creating a whole new set of table numbers, and it just didn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense to me on many planes. Number one, it's like, okay, I could be saving time by not doing all these table numbers. For two, it makes no sense for the couple to pay for a complete set of table numbers, because what the heck are they going to do with them afterwards?
That's true.
And then it was also environmental. It was just like, okay, what are they going to do with them afterwards? They're probably going to just toss them. They may sell them, or try and get rid of them, or give them to like a couple of, maybe a friend of theirs that are getting married. But for the most part, they're probably going to get trashed. And, there's enough trash going around. So it's like, I just decided, rentals just made sense. And so I created different lines, like there's the stained wood table numbers, like white ink. And then there's complimentary signs that are just very generic. So like cards and gifts, or please sign our guest book. In loving memory, like if they have a little memorial to those who have passed. And like unplugged ceremony is another one, that was a very popular, like put your cell phone away type thing.
Yeah, I like that.
And welcome sign is another one too. It's not specific. It just says welcome to our wedding, as opposed to like their names and dates and venue and everything. So so I do rentals. And then I expanded kind of like every year. So I have a bunch of different structures now. So different like easels, or like copper pipe structures, like wood structures, like stuff you can like hang signs from, or display them on as well. So
nice.
So rentals, they're not a huge part of my business, but they do help. It helps for budgeting. It helps couples that, there's less waste. They really, I think that's been like the number one response that I've gotten, is that they love that there's no waste afterwards, and then another thing too, is like, they don't have to worry about it. It's one less thing that they have to pack up in their car and take home and then have to deal with after the wedding.
Definitely.
So I think that's been like the biggest response for that. But, and it's not for everybody, there's some couples that just really want very specific type things, but it helps to really fulfill that need, for those who don't, where they're just like, it's just the table number, it doesn't need to be out of this world.
Right.
So like, speaking of that, where would you like say you market yourself towards? More like the higher end weddings, or kind of like in between the middle? Or
I'm all over the place. I do high end weddings, and I do lower. So last year was the first year that I finally implemented a minimum for signage for day of, and that's at $300, just because at a certain lower price point, I'm not making money, because there's still the same amount of emails. There's still the same amount of back end that is happening if you're spending 100 to 500 to 1,000 for the most part. So there's, the $1,000 or whatever, that might be a little bit more intricate, but not as much. So, I finally decided, there does need to be a minimum. Rentals for the most part don't have a minimum. And what I have found is that I don't really have all rental orders anyhow. For the most part, it's the couples that I'm working with that are just choosing to add them on to their current order.
That's cool. That's so cool. So what made you were you getting too many, can I just get one sign every time? And you're just like, I need a minimum now. This is getting too tedious here for little
I think it was, I can remember what incident it happened. I mean, she was super nice, but I counted the emails and there was about 112 emails for like a $39 order.
Oh gosh.
You're like, no.
And I think that's when I was just like, I just can't do this anymore. It's taking away time, from current clients that I'm also trying to work with as well.
Yeah.
And, there are other people in the industry that can, take on those type of orders if they want to, or not. Maybe they have minimums too. I haven't really asked, but it was just one of those instances where it's like, I really need to kind of set some boundaries.
Yeah. That's so cool. And more on that. So when you made the minimum, have you noticed a difference in the business? Like, has it affected it at all, or has it actually helped you more? I
haven't, for one, I don't know if everyone reads everything on my website, but, the inquiries, I haven't noticed anything changing for that. Maybe it's deterred people. I'm not sure. I don't think I have I don't know if my website tracks that. So yeah, I'd have to look in on that back end part, but even it's really easy. I think like overall, it's really easy with signage to hit $300.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
If you're like, for the most part, people always need, table numbers, cards, gifts, guest book, welcome, seating chart, bar menus, and then some like maybe some other stuff added on. Mm-hmm. It adds up quick, and it doesn't always add up to 300. Like even something that's super simple can add up to like 500, which, isn't that much, but it still adds up quick. So, and I think for the most part, like, especially, I don't know, I think especially just people understand it's like, yeah, we're expecting at least like 5 pieces. Mm-hmm. If you average that out, in 300, you're going to get there really fast.
Yeah. Cause I ask because a lot of sometimes, cause that could go towards anyone that's in the industry that is afraid to bring up their pricing because they're afraid that they might mm-hmm. lose clients and stuff if they do that. So that was why I was like heading that way.
Yeah. I decided, I think my stationary pricing has been on my website from the very get-go because what I do is very intense. I spend a lot of hours, with my couples and designing, and expectations from the client on their end, like what to expect, is very important to me. Being able to just be transparent and be like, this takes a lot of time, and this is why it costs this much. And custom stationery is, it's very intense. I always tell them that, like, just be prepared for the journey, So, I put the stationery on there. I think that's been on there for years now because I want clients, or potential clients to look at it and either say, we're good with that, or we're not good with that. Let's go explore other options. Yeah.
That's so cool. Like, I would say listening to everything that you have going on here, that yours is probably like one of the hardest jobs. That's hardcore. People, like, you could be real, like handwriting and people seeing that. That's pretty intense for people to like, not like judgmental, but as a creative, just kind of being worried about, how it looks and everything.
Mm-hmm. Making it perfect.
Attention to detail. That's one of my characteristics. I'm very very detail oriented. I will make sure every pixel is like accounted for. Yeah. But yeah, and the clients that I've worked with, they get that, and they also know that I care a lot too. Yeah. It's like I've brought up a lot of points in the past, where they're just like, oh, well, what if we did this? And it's like, that might be possible, but this is what I'm concerned about, mm-hmm. As opposed to, there are some people who are just yes people, it's just like, yeah, let's do that. And then when it all comes together, it falls apart. And it's just like, well, why didn't that work? It's like, oh, because this could have happened.
Yeah.
So
that's so cool. So with everything you have, do you also have a Etsy store?
I don't know. I go back and forth. Sometimes I'm not really a product person. So like Christmas cards or thank you cards or single item type things. I was actually just talking to my husband about this the other day. We live in a really tiny house and my desk and work area basically takes up, I'm at it right now, it takes up about a third of our living room right now. And even though I have a studio and flow, it's a shared space. Yeah. So I don't really have I have some dedicated area, but it's not enough to put up a shipping station, you know, and when you're doing products, you really need that space and area so you can package them, boom, boom, boom. And I just don't have the space for it. I was actually telling him, I'm like, maybe that's why I don't like products, because I don't have the capability to do it cohesively.
Right.
So
another monster.
It is. Yeah. And then it's also, I have to take into consideration that during wedding season, I'm incredibly busy. And last year, the amount of weddings that I had back to back to back was just crazy. Jeez. And if I had products on top of that, I would not be sleeping. And I would either have to hire someone specifically to take care of the product, you know, which is an option, but it's also building up the product to where it's to the point where I can justify hiring someone to take care of it. So that's one of the reasons I've really, you know, those are all the reasons why I've kind of stayed away from it. This year I kind of did a little bit more in products just because I wasn't getting the amount of weddings in a normal year. But ultimately I decided, I'm like, I don't know if, even if I did build this up a little bit, would I be able to continue it going back into a normal wedding season?
Definitely.
Right. So right now, have you been getting requests for projects outside of weddings, for businesses and branding and stuff like that, maybe?
There has been. I've been doing more work for businesses this year. I think, of course, you know, there's the hesitancy, you know, with the election and also with, you know, COVID and people being out of work and everything and having to cut back on their wedding budgets. So, you know, inquiries are definitely not like past years, but, you know, still getting work, thankfully. Very grateful for it. I'm hoping that starting next month, you know, people will start feeling a bit more comfortable. They'll get ready to commit to their wedding vendors and everything for the next year or even 2022 and, you know, get back into that process of planning. But sadly, I've been hearing across the board, you know, that a lot of couples are just so disheartened, you know, that they just don't even want to plan for their wedding right now, you know, with everything that's going on. And I mean, it breaks my heart to hear that, but I totally get it too. You know, it's like, okay, it's like, I'm not going anywhere. Don't worry about it. You know, once we get back into a better place, you know, give me a call.
Definitely. So I was curious too, when you create all these, you know, stationaries and everything for them, because I know with me, with prints or whatever, you know, we have that clause in our agreements where they can't promote with it or all this nonsense stuff. For you, is it the same way for your products? You can't resell these or you can't reuse them, I guess, or do you have something like that?
I think I do have that in my contract.
Yeah.
There's certain, it depends. It really depends on what it is. You know, so much stuff is very specialized to the couple. So their welcome sign, if it has their name on it, I don't imagine they're going to sell it. If they wanted to sell it, fine. They paid for it. So, you know, if you want to resell it, there's what I don't allow to be resold is files. Yeah. And I don't give files to couples. And I've never had anyone ask for them anyhow, because they're what would they do with them? You know, but when I do logos or anything that's like specific. You know, I have a separate contract that then releases liability for me. You know, they pay that extra cost, so they have the full right to use it, but they don't have the right to like manipulate it or change it. So like the file that they have, like they can't hire someone else to like come and like add a flower to it. So, so there's those kind of things. But yeah, usually with logos, you know, it's just like full release. It's like, yeah, if you want to go put it on a billboard, or if you want to go put it on hats, business cards, t-shirts, whatever, it's yours. You know, it's full release of everything. I have had businesses like approach me and be like, hey, can you like rework this? And one of my number one questions is like, okay, well, why didn't you ask the original designer? Two, can I rework this? Like I've had to turn down, you know, business before because it's like, you know, this doesn't sound, I could get sued, you know, by the original designer, you know, because they probably have the same thing that I have in my contract where it's like, this can't be reworked unless it's by the original designer. So,
yeah, that's cool.
So yeah, there's a little bit of that, but everything's so specialized that I don't know. I can't think of anything like anyone would like resell for the most part.
Yeah.
It's also like personal.
Yeah, I was just curious about that. That's pretty cool. So I saw on your website too that you do international orders. So like, can you elaborate with that? That's cool.
I can. I haven't had any international orders. Let's see. I'm trying to think. No, haven't had any. For the most part, the majority of my business is the Central Coast.
Yeah. Definitely.
And California second, and then other states, you know, being third. But it's tough with international because shipping is just super, super pricey. You know, and it's a whole nother beast of getting stuff, depending on what it is, like getting it there and then hoping and praying that it stays intact when it gets there. So, I mean, I'm sure we've all had boxes that have arrived and they're just like, what did you do? Like how, like it was square. Now it's like a trapezoid.
Yeah. And that's like from like maybe LA to here.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So no, but there's tons of other stationers and designers that, you know, work internationally. And for the most part, like it's probably better suited because, you know, other countries that also, you know, speak other languages, you know, it would be a lot easier for them. You know, I would put something into like, you know, Google Translate and be like, here you go. And they're like, no, that's not how it really needs to be said.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Good point. Christmas came up a little bit earlier. I was wondering, are you doing like something like the Christmas ornaments again this year? Those were so pretty.
I am debating. I have done pressed flower ornaments the past 2 years. And I'm debating. I haven't decided if I'm going to do them again this year or not, or if I'm going to just limit it. Like there's only 15 and that's it. And they're only available for like this time. So I'm not quite sure. So I've been debating. I need to make my decision in a couple weeks. And they usually do pretty good. So the hard part is that pressed flowers are just kind of like a whole nother, they're a whole nother beast. And I've been trying to think of ways to make it better. So I've been trying to get into like resin pouring because right now it's like flowers between two pieces of acrylic and then like clear screws keep everything intact. But I'm kind of worried about the longevity of that, like stuff losing like the static electricity or whatever and like the flowers like falling out or something. So I bought like a whole bunch of like resin and molds and everything. So I'm trying to think of like, how can I make it better? Like, how can I make it so where like, this is an ornament that sticks around for like 50 plus years, you know?
Yeah.
So, and I've seen like the resin pouring on like TikTok and Instagram and stuff, and it's just amazing and like beautiful. And then I did research on it, and wow, that's a whole other crazy craft thing. Like, like people get like super intense about it, and like they have like these ovens that you put stuff in, and then it sucks all the bubbles out, and I'm like, whoa. So haven't quite gotten there, but trying to rethink. And that's usually what I've done for Christmas ornaments. I haven't done anything else, and I'm not sure if I may do some Christmassy stuff, but I'm not sure if it's going to be ornaments. It may be like gifts as opposed to ornaments this year.
Yeah, that's super cool. That was
Stay tuned on the Christmas stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, Reina needs to make up her mind, basically.
So on that note, let's get into a little bit more of some hard-hitting questions. Not too hard. All right, here we go. Number one. Okay. What would you say is the hardest thing about being a calligraphy artist?
I think the hardest thing about it is trying to justify the artistic worth of it. Artists in general have a really hard time pricing their work because, like, there's like Picasso, Monet, stuff that goes for like millions and millions of dollars. And that's artwork, someone created it. Calligraphy, in its true sense is an art form. So, but then other people, it comes down to where like people really like, well, anyone can write a name. It's like, well, anyone can paint a picture too. Technically, but it's justifying your worth for it, and pricing accordingly. So I think that's one of the difficult things for like what I do overall is a lot of times it gets looked at as something like, well, I can do this, or I have a crafty friend who can create this. Why am I hiring you? So, I'm always trying to justify why to hire me. And it's not always a bad thing. It's like, it's just being like, you hire me because for one, I know what I'm doing. I've done it for years. 2, you don't have to worry about it. 3, it's going to come out professional because I'm very, very particular with how the final product comes out. Like my chalkboards, I'll do 2 to 3 layers to make sure that it's opaque. Whereas I've seen other work, not my own, and it's just, you see the streakiness of it. And to me, that's not a professional product. So, but the hard part is justifying the worth of it, because I'm an industry where, someone else can do it, but I have to put stuff out there and put myself out there in order to be like, this is why you hire me. And this is what makes it work good.
That's so cool. I like, you're right. We are in a very competitive industry. That's for sure. And I like how you're saying, I wonder what Picasso would say today if he was alive and we're like, oh, your painting's worth millions. I wonder what he would say to that. He'd be like, oh, that was just for fun.
Right.
Funny.
He was like, that's not even my best work. That's a burn or something.
That'd be so funny. So also let's get into a little bit about the COVID, since everyone's dealing with this right now.
Yeah. So,
unfortunately. As a business owner, since weddings have been limited due to COVID, how has it impacted your business? I would think, since you're kind of like you mentioned before, you're kind of like behind the scenes, that you would still have some good business going on, but I could be wrong.
It's really impacted it a lot. So this has been the weirdest, slowest year ever, and I'm not used to that. So it's been strange. Oh, excuse me. Luckily, there's still been projects that have been keeping me going, and everything. But my husband, he's in finance, so he's the one that does my book. Nice. And he went in and I use a system called Wave, and that's what takes care of my finances and everything. And it was all out of whack from just a lot of different factors and stuff. And so he went in and recategorized certain things, made sure that this was in the right place. This was categorized as this. This was not an expense. It was something else, And I've been using the system for the past 3.5 years. So it's tracked, my progress from these, the past 3.5 years. And when he came up with the final number and I logged in and I was just like,
whoa.
I mean, basically I lost 75% of my business.
Whoa, dang.
So when it comes to the bottom line of it, sure, was I bringing in something, but in each year that Wave has been tracking, my business has doubled.
Yeah.
And this was supposed to be another blockbuster year, and I had totally planned for it and was ready for it, in accounting that my business has increased exponentially each year. It's like, okay, we're going to make it happen this year even better. And to just see that number and be like, oh, I knew it was bad.
but dang.
So, whoa, that's not an easy number to swallow. I mean, I've been very lucky that, I did qualify for unemployment, and I've been getting it since they allowed self-employed to get it. And of course there was the supplement from, the federal part that kicks in too. So that helped. I got a small business loan, which has been helping out as well. So
definitely. I
did everything that I needed to do. Again, I'm a very business-minded person as well as a creative. So basically when COVID, when everything, the very first inkling, of this is going down and this is going down hard, for COVID, I was on the horn to, any lender or credit card company that I had.
Yeah.
And I actually called, there were 2 companies that I called, and they're like, we don't even have a plan in place yet, because I was that ahead of it, I guess. Or I was I basically went into survival mode. I was like, what can I do to survive?
Yeah.
I need to survive. What can I do? And so, took care of that. Took advantage of any program that would let me, Adobe, gave creatives 3 months for free if you asked for it. So I went and waited in their chat forum and asked for it and got that. So I got that for 3 months and did everything I could. So it hasn't been easy, but it's you have to do what you have to do to survive it. And hoping that next year is a lot better. Yeah. We will see. But also very grateful that my husband has kept his job the whole entire time.
Definitely.
There you go.
So his business pivoted really well. They weren't quite sure, but luckily we're at a very good place. So we're not hurting or anything, which, he's a state. I know there's so many out there that are not in a good position, but it's the feeling of just being grateful every day. It's like, all right, thankfully we're in that place.
Yeah. I like how you're saying that, with the business, there have been some businesses that have unfortunately had to stop. And I like how you mentioned about tracking, because when we started our business, you could see 1 year's better than the other. And you're kind of okay, what happened here? What did I do differently? And
right.
Yeah. And then with COVID, it definitely hit
You're
us
not
all.
alone there. We all expected 2020 to be different than it was, but
right. I mean, 2020 was supposed to be huge. I mean,
for everyone.
Supposed to be one of the best years ever for weddings, especially. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I guess not.
Psych.
Yeah. No kidding.
But
2021, yay.
So through this, have you had more inquiries for postponement cards or anything like that?
Not really. I offered the free ones. They're still on my website if people want to order them too. I didn't feel good charging for something like that. It's like, oh gosh, you've already gone through enough, you know? I mean, what has happened is that the bulk of my weddings, you know, that were in 2020 that had already booked me, you know, rescheduled for 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I use HoneyBook for one of my back end processes to keep everything organized. And I was on there this weekend. I mean, there's already weekends for next year that are like double booked for weddings. So it's like, all right, get your roller skates on and let's get this party started. So, new inquiries are beginning to trickle in for next year. I think there's, you know, like I said, there's still the uneasiness right now that people are feeling. You know, I'm hoping that, you know, once the holidays hit and people start, you know, we're through the worst of it, hopefully, you know, and start enjoying themselves and getting like more into that holiday spirit, which kind of, you know, boosts their spirits overall. And then they're like ready to start booking. So we'll see, you know, not really sure what to expect, but, you know, be prepared basically.
Definitely. And with your work, it looks like I said before, perfection. And I'm pretty sure you're going to boom in 2021.
I'm hoping. Fingers crossed. Thank you.
So let's get on on a cooler, higher, funner note. So what would you say is, as we're wrapping up this convo here, what would you say is the coolest or funnest or wildest or craziest project you've ever worked on so far?
Oh man. Let's see. I would have to say it was one of last year's weddings, one of the last ones that I did. And it was completely just, I mean, everything. I loved everything about it. I worked with a couple, you know, the planner introduced us and worked with a couple on their stationery. And there's this beautiful mauve colored paper with like a white ink foil impression. And just everything was so like old world, beautiful, romantic. But the day of stuff was super fun, especially the signage. Did these amazing Sabbath banners to where like the backer was this like floral plush looking fabric, just beautiful, like autumn colors with like rosy tones to it. But then the front of it was like sheer, and I did it was a iron-on heat transfer application to it, and it just, the way that it looked was just, I haven't seen anything like it. So I love seeing like those type of things where it's like, I haven't seen this.
Yeah.
And cool. Oh my gosh, I created it. It's like,
That's awesome.
you know, it's that feeling of like accomplishment where you're just like, high five myself. Yay. But it's hard to choose just one, because there's a lot of stuff. Even just one of the past weddings I just did, you know, the very like ranch one. Oh gosh, the dinner menus were just spectacular. I laser cut wood and then stained it. It was a custom made stain. And then we did layers for the menu. So like the bottom layer was a watercolor of like a cow. On top of that was the dinner menu. But then on top of that was laser etched leather with their like, you know, their specialty brand on it. So it's like when you saw it, you saw, you know, the layers kind of peeking out. But then what really like sealed the deal is like I hammered in these copper horse nails. So to keep like the paper, I mean, I glued and taped everything anyhow, but it made that illusion to like, this is what's keeping the paper on the wood. Mm-hmm. So it was just like depth, texture, color, you know, but in like, it was just pretty darn cool.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, the most satisfying part was actually hammering the nails. I don't know why. It was just like, it was just kind of soothing just to be like, bang, bang, bang.
Yeah, that sounded, as I was listening to it, that sounded pretty complicated. Yeah. I was like, whoa. Layers on layers.
Yeah, there's, not all weddings, but like, you know, there's certain ones where there's a lot of steps, you know, like the menu. was a lot of steps, you know, to make it look effortless. So
that's so cool. Hey, Reina, well, we had such a great time learning about your business and everything that you do. But before we let you go, can you let the listeners know where they could find you?
Sure. Website is fetteandquill.com. So F is in Frank, E, T is in Tom, EANDQUILL.com. Best place to find me is on Instagram. So that's the same thing, at Fête and Quill. And that's usually where I'm the most vocal on stuff. So like letting people know like what's going on, or showing behind the scenes, or like if the ornaments do happen, that's where I'm going to announce it. Yeah. And it's the best portfolio I feel that I have too. So that's where I spend a lot of my time.
Man, that was such an awesome episode. It was super interesting just hearing about everything that goes into the process. I mean, I was getting carpal tunnel just listening.
Yeah, I know. Reina's work is just so beautiful. I could spend all day just scrolling through her Instagram portfolio. So it was really neat hearing more about her design process, especially how inspired she gets by all of her couples. So it makes total sense now why all of her pieces are just so unique and original.
Definitely. As always, guys, thanks again for tuning in to the Wedding Vendors Happy Hour. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button to hear from some more amazing wedding professionals. Till then, we'll catch you on episode 26.